You're live.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for tuning in today to our show. We got a lot of interesting things to talk about, but what is paramount, what is critical is the uptick in death and severe injuries due to the Delta variant. We have to talk about that because I believe that that's probably the number one issue that we're facing today in our community. We may experience such an increase that we may have to roll back some of the freedom that we now have. I think that we're headed to a point where we may have to go back to wearing masks again. But for all those holdouts and for all the folks who has that uncle, that cousin, that friend who is giving you grief about not getting vaccinated, let's just talk about some pointers that we can give you as ammunition today to try to counteract these crazy arguments. And they're crazy as heck. I've had some people I've talked to, and these arguments about conspiracy theories and the reason that they're not willing to take the test is so absurd until I thought maybe we need to have a forum where we actually educate folks about what this process is. Now, first, what is vaccination? Vaccination is a simple, the administration of a vaccine to help your immune system. This process started, inoculation from the smallpox was first recorded back in the 16th century. So vaccination as a process didn't just start recently, it's been around for 500 years. It was also smallpox, for example, was the first disease for which a vaccine was produced. And then by 1776 in America, they started doing certain testing with microbiology and things like that. And they developed vaccines that became popular in America. That was in the 1700s. And we use the term vaccination and immunization interchangeably. They're different. But in essence, what they do is vaccines are a way of artificially activating the immune system to protect against infectious disease. This activation happens through priming the immune system with an agent that stimulates the immune system to respond to an infectious agent or disease. That process is called immunization. And so most vaccines have been administered whenever we've had the potential to have disease process. You know, we've had vaccination for rabies, for dog bites, for all types of disease. You know, they even, I saw some early administration about the disease process and how we were protecting it. And now starting off, I had a lengthy discussion with a friend this week about vaccination, and he was a decorated military hero, and he believed in many of the conspiracy theories. So he started off with this argument like this. When you went to school, did you have vaccinations? Of course you did, otherwise they didn't let you in the door, right? You had to bring your shot record. And at any time, did you ever learn what product was being injected into your body? Nobody ever told you what the product was. The people that were doing the inoculation probably didn't know. So now, your whole life, you've had these vaccinations, and they've kept you healthy. They kept you alive. And you had no idea of exactly what we're being injected in your body. Now, all of a sudden, because of InfoWars, right-wing people that control the internet, Fox News, and all these crazy conspiracy theories, QAnon, and today we're literally overwhelmed with information that is fundamentally false. You can't go to any source on the computer hardly and see some information that's fundamentally flawed. And so the net result is the average citizen probably don't know where to turn. They're getting so much negative information. But the one thing that is for certain, folks, for certain, every day we see body counts. When the president started this massive program, vaccine shots are free. We were almost up to 5,000 Americans dying every day. And then we started this massive program. You can get vaccines everywhere, and everybody went out. And a lot of people went out, took their shots. And then there was a dramatic decrease. Did everybody notice that? The decrease worked. And because of that, what happened, when the decrease started reducing the body counts, they reduced the restrictions. When restrictions were reduced, we have a more vibrant economy. We were able to take off the mask, and life suddenly became normal again. At least we thought. Then we find out that folks are hesitant to take their vaccine. And because of that, we're having an increase in this deadly disease. But when did vaccination start for the flu? You know, we got the 500 history, but the first documented influenza illness that I saw in the medical journal was back in 1510. And through the scholars, they showed that a worldwide pandemic occurred in 1557, and this ran to 1580, beginning in Asia and Russia and spreading in Europe and places around the world. It caused many deaths. And subsequently, of course, it came to America. Now, over the years, we had this flu virus interrupt our daily life, but one of the most devastating flu virus that initially hit America was back in 1919, and it was called the Spanish flu. And it was estimated that the Spanish flu caused 21 million deaths worldwide, and it was deemed one of the worst medical disaster in history at the time. And so as time progressed, they started working on vaccine to counteract that disease process. And there were developments after that date. In 1932 and 1933, scientists worked on these projects, and they isolated the virus from nasal secretion of infected patients, and thereby demonstrating the nasal human transmission of the virus. So they figured out how the virus was being transmitted. And then once they determined how the virus and the composition of virus, then they were able to start developing antibiotics for this flu virus. In the first clinical trials of the flu virus that was recorded that I found happened in the mid 1930s. And so by 1937, I saw an article where they were using vaccination. They were using mice, and they were trying to determine could they develop immunization through this process. And so this kept going forward. And so by 1942, folks, large studies was conducted, and they studied potential vaccines of flu. It was in the 40s, and then they started doing tests. And so this kept going forward. So eventually they developed vaccines for this deadly disease process. And we'll take our first caller now. Okay, caller, you have a question or comment about this vaccination process. How are your friends doing?
Doing just fine. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Lee, you struck a nerve with me when you mentioned that people don't realize that what we got when we were younger was shot. I can recall when I was in grade school, I stood in line to take the polio shot, keep us from getting polio, and also the smallpox shot. And if there's a conspiracy, the conspiracy is that if out of ignorance you don't take this vaccine because you think that there's something that the government's trying to do to you, understand this. If we as a people, and I'm talking about Black folks, don't get ourselves taken care of physically and healthy-wise, we won't be around. So I'm just suggesting to all of your listeners that they really should get out here and do this. I just came back from the hot spot in the country, Las Vegas, and it was fine when I got there, but when I left, it's masked up. They're going backwards. So many people just aren't paying attention to that. So it's something about taking care of Black folks and Black folks taking care of their health. You need to look into this, and you need to be around so that we can continue to make change in this country. I'll hang up and listen to the comments.
That's a great comment. I appreciate that you're calling, Fred, because it's something that we each must do. If you have your friend, your neighbor, your relative, if they're not vaccinated, then they put you at risk. The one thing that we learned, it was never ever told to anyone that vaccination is 100% safe. They were saying that they were 95%. So there's a few cases when people who aren't vaccinated are actually affecting a few people that are vaccinated. So the problem that we're getting into is that if you're around your friends and relatives and they're against being vaccinated, they pose a risk of harm to you. And so those folks, you need to make sure they wear masks at all times so they don't spread what is the Delta variant to you. Now, the other thing that we know is that if you do contract this flu virus after being vaccinated, we've got a study to show that nobody's died. The symptoms are a lot less severe. Now we'll go to the next call on the line. Sir, you have a question or comment for us today?
Yes. I wanted just to comment. First of all, let me preface this by saying I'm vaccinated. And what I did was I prayed over the vaccination that it will not do anything to my body other than what it is to stop me from getting COVID. And but there is a truth to the what we call that conspiracy theory, in the sense that as you look out when you read the Bible, it talks about you won't be able to buy or sell except you take the mark of the beast. And there are people out there that want to control the world. And a beginning aspect of that I perceive is you couldn't buy or sell unless you have a mask on. And there's just so much that a mainstream media don't tell us, you know, because they have a narrative that when you got like three different news outlets that's telling you everything that they want you to hear with no opposing voices. But some of this stuff we got to be careful of. But get vaccinated, but pray over it. And don't be so hard on the people who refuse to. That's my comment.
Well, thank you very much. And now we've got a line full of callers, so try to limit your response to about 2 minutes, caller. Okay, next caller.
Oh, good morning, Nate. This is Pierre.
Hey, Pierre.
Here's my thing. On this issue.
Can you turn your volume up just a little bit more, Pierre?
How's that?
That's better. Go ahead.
Yeah, on this issue, and I'm a supporter, but we need more leadership from the president on this issue. And he's on the order of a national address, and he's said as much as he could say till he's blue in the face, but he needs to do a national address, tell the people. He needs to speak to specific groups, Black Americans, or white Americans, and he just needs to let them know that the government has done everything that they can do. And they provided this vaccine, and, they've done all that they can do, and if they want the country to move forward, they'll get it. Some people feel like they can't get it. Talk to your doctor, but there's millions of people, Black people in South Africa, that would love to take the vaccine. They can't even get it, and they want it. And then we're sitting here in a country where we have the best medical advice. We've got vaccines and everything, and because of, like Dion Levinson said, everybody's an expert now. You can get on Facebook or whatever, and you can sprout your your theories and everything, and it's really hurting the country. So and it's really not doing Black America any good either. So the president, this is a defining moment for him. He just needs to do it.
Well, Pierre, one quick thing that I need to advise you: the president been on like about at least a dozen times doing exactly what you're saying. They even had a town hall where they talked to people about this. And I'm on the email thread. They have at least twice a week, they're doing press conferences and Zoom calls with hundreds of thousands of people all over the country, faith leaders, community leaders. And so it's an ongoing process. Now, the latest that I got a week ago is they're proposing something drastic. The government is talking about paying people $100 now to just take the shot to save their lives. It's just incredible. And so they're exasperated. They've tried everything. It's, the vaccination is free. And you can't go in any city not be able to find a place to get vaccination now.
Right. Have you done a prime time national address?
I'm sorry, you say that a fireside? I can't hear you.
Have you done a prime time presidential national address?
They've done, well, just a week ago, they did the town hall on CNN. And so what I'll do is that, since you said that, I'll send an email to the White House and see whether or not they'll try that. I'm not sure how much different it's gonna be. Maybe you need to do it from Oval Office, a prime time. Okay, we'll try that. I'll send that to them. Prime time address at Oval Office. And what do you think he should say?
he just needs to give it to these people straight and no chaser. It's all the government has done all that they can do, and if you want the country to move forward, and he needs to specifically address those states, those poor white folks and black folks who don't want to take the vaccine, and he just needs to let them know, this is what we've done. This is what's going to happen if you don't get vaccinated, and just let the record show the government has done all that they can do to help get this country through this thing. And tell them, make the example. There's millions of black people in Africa that would love to take the shot. They can't get it. So,
Okay. I'll pass that on. I get these White House conference every week, and I'll send that to them. Well, thanks a million. Now, this time, our producer's telling me that we need to take a short 2-minute commercial break. We got a whole host of callers on the line. Hold the line. Our phone number is 317-239-1310. 317-239-1310. We'll get back to you in about 2 minutes, callers, so stay on the line. Thank you. Now, for the folks that are also on YouTube and Facebook, we've had some interesting calls today, but one of the things that I need to emphasize, we had a really bad pandemic in 2009, the H1N1, and that was transmitted to human beings by pigs, and it was estimated to cause about 200,000 deaths during the first 12 months that it occurred, and we had about 65 million Americans that contracted the disease, but it was not as deadly. It was treatable, even though the hospital was filled with people, but it was not as deadly in no sense as this coronavirus, and we survived. But the difference between the flu virus in 2009 and the coronavirus, when they were doing vaccination weren't designed to cover every potential threat of the virus. That's very important that people understand that. I remember doing a jury trial on this issue, and I discovered, much to my surprise, that there may be 20 or more variants of flu virus, and the government would have their intelligent people get the highest 3, and they would make a composition of chemicals to try to defeat the one that's going to be the most aggressive, and also the ones that will cause the most death. And so when we took the flu shots earlier, it was based upon science, and they were trying to get the highest trends of the disease process defeated. Now with COVID-19, they were a little bit more target specific. And so we saw evidence of that right before our eyes. We saw like a miracle. One day there's 4,000 more people dying in America. And then after we had injected about 20% of the population, we saw a dramatic shift. And then we got 30%, it got better. Then 40%, it got better. Then as we were getting to 50%, then it slowed down. Why? Because we can never get to that threshold of this herd immunity, the 70% or 80%, because then people stop taking the shots. We then had these people that came up with all these conspiracy theories. And if you ever talk to some of these folks that are refusing to take shots, I guarantee you it'd be very interesting and educational. I remember talking to people that have advanced degrees, and when they tell you, now I know there are some folks who have autoimmune disease. I understand that. And those folks are not necessarily candidates for vaccination. But when you refuse to take it, you don't have the disease process, then you're putting those people at risk. The other people is expectant mothers or mothers who are breastfeeding. Understand that. There's no evidence that those folks should be taking the shots. So we'll get back to this in a second. Our YouTube people, let's go back to the line. Let's take the next caller. Caller, you have a question for us? And try to limit your comments to about 2 minutes. Okay, go ahead, sir.
Hello.
Hello, Larry. How you doing today, sir?
Hello. How you doing, Nate?
Great. Have you been vaccinated, Larry?
I'm doing just fine, but this is a real embarrassment what we're going through right now with Joe Biden. Everybody can see what his problem is, and to have some people like him and Nancy Pelosi setting our policy for a nation as powerful as the United States, it's a national embarrassment. And this thing with the COVID, Nate, you know what's going on here. Our kids have been out of school for a whole year now, and they're lining them up for nothing but failure and going to prison. And black people need to be able to see that. You can't save anybody's life, mate. I don't care what you do. The only cure for viruses is to catch the disease and let your body do over it. You don't close your country down when 600,000 people dies. I don't care what it is. They've never done it with the flu epidemic. They did not close our economy down. All they're doing is trying to have more enslavement by giving these women the welfare checks again. It's just enslaving people. You know that's what's happening, Nate.
Well, here's my take on this. I respect what this. Here's my take on this. Here's the deal.
It's enslavement.
We have a disease process that is so terrible until the 600,000, I think it's twice that many. By going to the coroner's office and funeral homes, you'll see that because we have secondary death caused by the disease. Now, the second part of that is we have a process that once the people you just criticized, President Biden took office, he started a massive program to try to eradicate the problem. So vaccination was expanded. They bought 600 million doses and they made it available everywhere. Now, once it was made available, we had an influx of people taking the shots right away. Everybody was taking it. Then all of a sudden, conspiracy took over. And now we have about 40% of the population who seem like they're refusing to take the shots. And that's the problem. Because now we have this.
Hey, Nate.
Yes.
Hey, Nate, why do you care?
Because my friends, my neighbors, I had relatives died from the disease process. I have friends that coded on the table and they brought back alive. I have close friends of mine that's still alive today that barely survived this disease process. I care because.
Well, why don't they stay in the house for the rest of their life?
Well, no, that's the point. If everybody were to take shots, we can get past this. We've always gotten past the disease process once we found a cure. For whatever reason now, people are refusing to take shots to get rid of the disease. Did you take your shot already, Larry?
It's laughable, mate, and you know it is, because they can blame it on people all they want to. The professionals are supposed to know what to do. Dr. Fauci is a senile old man. He should not be setting policy for our nation. This is a powerful nation. We thrive on capitalism in our economy, not on when, like in the state of Indiana, when 20,000 people died, you set your whole economy down, and now we got 8.5 million people facing homelessness and getting their houses foreclosed on for a bunch of garbage. The whole thing is a lie, Nate. They know it's a lie. And these pedophiles that are operating against our children, they need to be punished. They really do. God's going to.
Thank you, Larry.
But I'm sick of it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next caller now. Okay, go ahead. Next caller. We got a lot of folks, so please keep your comments about 2 minutes.
How's it going, sir?
I'm doing great.
Hey, it's great listening to Naptown. I'm going to make a movie about Naptown. You got some characters. From Larry to Pierre. Pierre used to call down to Atlanta and cry on the phone. I want to ask you something. I'm not on either or, but I'm just listening to how the people are requesting the government to really take their freedoms over something that they don't know nothing about. Pierre's not a doctor. Larry's not a doctor. They're not even scientists. So their opinion means nothing, but people are listening to black people in their ignorance, begging the government to do something that they don't have no idea that what they asking for. Let me ask you something. What about if we get our president, Mr. Biden, to call in the National Guard and do stop and frisk in the black community in this injected shot like that? Just because he's already talking about going door to door. What about us calling him, writing him a letter, and telling him, hey, we need for you to bring the government in, stop and frisk every black, and enforce the shot on them? What do you think about that? Because that's what.
Well, let me tell you what I think. I respect what your thought process are, but it's legally it's a terrible idea. Let me explain why. In our country, we're a democratic process, and we have certain freedom. One of the freedom, of course, is the Fourth Amendment. What you're saying is that if the military occupies our community, that's an abrogation of the Fourth Amendment rights that we have as citizens, undue search and seizure. So we can never, ever forget about the constitutional protections. And also, what protects us as citizens is not necessarily police officers or the military, it's the respect for rules of law of citizen. See, the reason why you can walk out of your house each day, worry about stepping out the front door being shot, is because you expect your neighbors to follow the rule of law. And so we are a country of self-governance where people are required to adhere to certain norms. Now we see a radical departure now. We see too many homicides in our community. But the solution not to invoke a military tribunal to control our conduct. The better solution is that we need to go back to foundation. Care-like charity must begin at home. So we have to work on the home structures to try to reduce this violent episode of crime. Also, I don't think that our local police are doing a good enough job here in the city, quite frankly. I think they're doing a terrible job in terms of policing. But I don't think that the solution is to do stop and frisk. I think that there's better methods of controlling crime.
Well, that's what Pierre is asking for. I mean, if Trump was in there, we would be outraged. But that's what Pierre is asking for. You're not saying, you didn't say anything to him. And then you got Charles Williams, the police, the preacher. He wants to stop and frisk. They doing stop and frisk in Cincinnati. You got a president that put that law down in the 90s, and he's talking about it again. A couple weeks ago, he talked to all the mayors and the prosecutors, and they about to do stop. Matter of fact, they doing it in Chicago, so they about to do it. So let's go on and get stop and frisk. Let's lock up the dope boys, and as we lock them up and go in the neighborhood, give everybody the shot. That's what we really asking for. That's what Pierre said.
Well, what they don't understand, here's the problem with that. Black males have a 6-to-1 chance of being shot, killed.
Really don't mean a hell of a bean. Thank you.
Well, see, here's the problem. Black males have a 6-to-1 probability of being shot and killed by police officers than white males. But we have about a 15-to-1 in terms of being brutalized by police officers. So if we invite more police oversight in our community that eradicate the Fourth Amendment, eradicate those protections that our Constitution gives us to equal protection under the 14th Amendment, then we will have more death by cops and more brutality by cops than what we currently experience. So the net result is not to give police more authority. We have to have smarter policing. Smarter policing means that we have to be proactive in our community. Citizens, one of the things we have to do is do a better job of solving crime. So right now, our current police department is doing a terrible job, folks. They're doing a terrible job of solving crime. I experienced it firsthand this week. We had a mass shooting at the FedEx, and I represent 5 or 6 of the victims. It's a terrible tragedy. And who did the shooter shoot? Well, he shot at a lot of minorities and black folks, you know, and Carl Smith is biracial, but beautiful, beautiful young lady, shot her in the face. Here's the problem. So their grand conclusion after all this investigation, where they produced no records, no document, no video, no evidence has been produced, they came to the conclusion it was not a hate crime. Well, these people are all dead through the conduct of a suicidal maniac that was probably a racist. And so their defense to him is that, well, it wasn't hate. Well, yes, it was. It didn't take 4 months to figure that out, 3 months, because you could look at who he shot. And it was insulting to me because, you know, I attended the thing. They say they didn't want any lawyers there. They didn't want anybody to answer the question. So the police department in this city said that we do not have the intelligence to answer a question by somebody who knows what to ask. Like, if you say that this is not a hate crime, then why were all the people shot minorities? There was some Caucasians there. They weren't shot. I mean, even as the black folk drove up in the parking lot, the guy was shooting at them in that car. And so the point I'm making is that we need to have a better job of police department. Our police department is doing a poor job for the citizen, but it's not a good idea to give these people more power because they're doing a bad job with the power they currently have. And I got specific examples of some of the things they've done through my professional career to let you know, do you not want to give the police any more power? Please don't ever say that again, because it's a bad idea. When you see the results of how we had one gentleman that was shot in the back 49 times by a police officer here in the city. I have numerous stories of police misconduct that are scary. And this idea of giving them more power, bad idea, folks. At this time, we'll take a short commercial break. Now, having said that, back to this flu virus. The H1N1 flu virus represented a significant disease process in America. But what was educational for all Americans is something that happens during this last pandemic. During the last pandemic, one of the things that we experienced is that we wore masks on public transportation, inside our building, when you stepped outside, when you went to grocery stores, wherever you went, you had to wear a mask. And what happened when we wore masks? Well, we almost eliminated the regular flu. It was just the most dramatic decrease that I've ever seen in the typical flu season. It was non-existent. So now we know that what they learned back from the 1819 Spanish flu, it took them a while to figure out how the disease transmitted. And they determined that it was transmitted by a particle that emanated from people's nasal cavity. And yeah, we'll break. And so now, okay, back to our live audience again. And producer, let our next caller come through if they're ready.
Yes, I was calling all of those that are hesitant about taking the vaccine. First of all, I've had mine. Just let them read Leviticus 13. That might help them out. It talks about all the different diseases that's been here even before now, and it talks about being quarantined, and everything is in Leviticus 13. Just read that, and for those that are hesitant, maybe that will help them. And those who have not been vaccinated really shouldn't even be in the conversation, and I thank you. Bye.
Well, I really appreciate your comment, because I want you to do one other thing, too, caller. I want you to start preaching to all your neighbors and all your friends, and don't let anybody come around you that haven't been vaccinated without you giving them an earful. And also, to save your own life, make sure they wear a mask if they've not been vaccinated. Okay, next caller.
Hey, how you doing, Brother Nate? Brother Montep here, how you doing?
Well, I got my intelligent friend on the line. Now, listen.
Because I don't think people really understand when we learned this in public health when I was in school. If the government declared a true public health crisis, then they can mandate, because it would be in the interest of public health. They could mandate the shop everywhere. But I just say, for people who want to talk crazy, it being almost 30 years in the healthcare profession, don't take anything. Don't walk around with tetanus protection. Don't walk around with whooping cough pertussis. Don't go get any kind of protection. Don't put gloves on when you're washing. Okay? Don't put your seatbelt on. The government mandated seatbelts. I don't think they should have mandated seatbelts. They did. They did. I didn't like that. I didn't like that law, but they did. Why? Public safety, public health issue. Go ahead and drink and drive. Remember, MAD and SAD? That was what, the early '80s when MAD really got into it, when the drinking and driving laws first changed. You don't like the root? Go ahead and drink and drive. I mean, come on, Nate. I'm almost 60. Many folks drink and drive, and my dad's in here. And a lot of people still do. But go ahead and drink and drive, too. How about speeding? Why are you driving 55, 60 miles, 70 on the highway right now? Heck, I was out west not long ago. They're driving, there is no limit in certain areas out west. Drive 110, 120, 130. What the heck? Go ahead. Let's stop picking and choosing what we want that fits our agenda, okay? There's reasons why certain laws and things were passed because of public health reasons and because of pressure. Especially, I remember when MAD put the pressure to get the drunk driving laws changed. Y'all know you remember it, don't you?
Yes. Well, I have a lot of dead bodies each year because of drinking and driving.
It was normal. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Every week, somebody in Indianapolis get killed because of somebody is impaired through drugs or alcohol.
And then, hold on, cell phones. Let's go to cell phones now. Remember, cell phones were a public health problem because then all the states passed that you had to be hands-free. You couldn't talk with a cell phone. See, I still ride past, see people with the phone to their face, not looking, not paying attention. I rode a motorcycle for years. I can't count how many times I almost got hit because folks not paying attention. But I was. Okay, period. So forget that law, too. Go ahead and put the cell phone up to your face and go ahead and go back and talk on that. Those are the reasons why those laws were passed, because they entailed a detriment to public health. So that's where we're almost at. You can choose to do what you want to do, but don't pick and choose. Okay, don't go get any more. Let tetanus, my last tetanus Tdap was in 2015. It's every 10 years. I'll be there in 10 years to get it. I'll be there in 4 years to get it. 2025, I'll be getting it again. So don't pick and choose. Just leave yourself open to everything. Just leave open to everything, and then I'll call you a true believer. Because a true believer won't take anything for anything.
If a person did all that, they'll be dead in a month. I mean, they would live. In other words, that person is what you call being suicidal.
That's exactly right. Because you had a case in Lafayette where a Jehovah's Witness family, they had a daughter who had cancer, bone cancer, Lou Gehrig's disease, and all she needed was a bone transplant. We studied this. All she needed was a bone transplant, a blood transfusion, and bone marrow. It was against their religious beliefs. They didn't do it. The girl died. They were prosecuted. You may have heard of the case. It was in Lafayette. White couple. They were prosecuted, okay, because all they had to do was get a blood transfusion, and that girl would have lived. And they didn't do it, and the girl died. So you can choose to do people. We've seen the most stupidest things in healthcare. I've seen people do the most stupidest things, okay, not just now, for years. But don't go when your blood pressure's up and get a pill. Don't go when your sugar's up and get insulin. Don't go when cholesterol's up and get cholesterol, get Plavix or something like that. Don't go for anything. Then I'll call you a real true warrior then. How about that one then, huh? Yeah, when I put it that way, then your eyes get opened on it public. Thanks, Nate.
Wow. Okay, next caller. Thank you. Okay.
So, yeah, we've had one too many speeches. Thank you for taking my call. Gosh, that last caller, I don't even know, like where to start. Number one, what prompted me to call in is, just how this thing is being packaged. Number one, if the argument is insulting in any type of way, automatically I think you guys should understand that people are going to kind of tune out. So a lot of what I've heard, through this whole vaccination campaign is a lot of, almost like name calling and finger pointing and, insulting people's intelligence and that type of thing. So I guess the first thing I want to say is that approach won't get lots of people. I do respect the intelligence and, the education of the scientific community, but insulting what you feel is the other side is not going to get the result that you want. And then I guess I also want to just kind of comment on this whole statement or rebuttal of Black people of saying, well, hey, they've already done this to us and you went along with it. So, this is just one more thing. That for me is, a little warped in thinking. So I just kind of wanted to comment on that, and just continue to encourage people to curb their enthusiasm for the things that don't fit into their lives and their life and their lifestyles on a personal level, and tune out the people on whatever side that does not cater to, what you promote and manage in your own household. Now is not the time for banners and, entertainers to be given scientific and medical research type of information. I'm not interested in that. I've been already lied to and coerced and bamboozled up until this point. So now for that to just change arms, that doesn't do anything special. Yes, there are a group of people out there that do not want to take the vaccine, and they're not ignorant, right? And you insulting them is not going to get them on your side, is my point.
Well, what I do is that when I run across my friends and people I run across who have not been vaccinated, I have a discussion with them because I think that there's so much misinformation out there. And I remind them of some of the things that they knew, like they took before they went to elementary and high school, college, whatever, they were required to be vaccinated for a certain disease process. And throughout our life, we've always had this. Now we have a product that we know that's demonstrated that it saves lives. The problem that exists, though, is that when people do not get vaccinated, they put us all at risk. So their protest to being vaccinated cause other folks to die potentially. And so that's what I'm concerned about. So if you want to be selfish and say that, no, I'm not gonna get vaccinated, then stay at home, wear a mask, don't go around people because you run the risk to make other folks die. And I don't think that's fair. So one of the freedoms that we have is freedom of choice. But you take away that choice for a person who have done everything right to have a productive life free of this deadly disease process. And that's the issue. Okay, next caller. Hello?
Hello?
Yes, caller, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Yes, I've been confused a little bit. I took the vaccine and I still wear my mask. And I'm hearing about people's constitutional rights and what do they want to do. But if you don't wear the mask and you die, don't be putting the problem on the government or the health department. So you either do or die. So you shouldn't have to pay people to take the vaccine. If there's an epidemic, people should be smart enough to take the vaccine. You take it, you die. You don't take it, you die. But the trouble is you might live a little longer. And stop blaming people when people start dying, blaming the government, blaming the president. He's begging people to take it and they won't take it. You're making it so confusing, saying all this kind of stuff. Just say, hey, you don't want to take it? Die. You take it, you might survive. End of story. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, caller. Oh, you got your point across. Okay, next caller.
Yeah. My good buddy and I, most have agree and disagree on a lot of subjects, but I certainly agree with him on this. The last thing that I remember the government did was a real ID to get your driver's license. I had jumped through all kind of hoops to get that because my birth certificate was a little different from my name at the time. They need to come right out, flat out, and require everyone, every swinging in the country to get vaccinated for public safety reasons. And that's the way I feel about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next caller. Go ahead. Okay, now, a couple comments. We had some views that were a little bit different. And let's go through this real quickly as to how we get to where we were. This process started probably in December of 2019. Then by late February of last year, we had some reported cases. And in March, we had an indication that this is going to be really bad. But our then president downplayed the disease process. He kept telling American people it'd be gone by April, it'd be gone by May. And there was never proactive step to present massive death in America. Don't forget that. See, there were studies that suggested that over 60% of the folks in America would still be alive today if the government had been proactive at the beginning of this process by requiring masks. But our government, within the 45th president, ignored it. And so it became a crisis where up to 4,000 to 5,000 Americans was dying every day. And that's how we got here. Then we got a new president, but the old president say, even though he lost by 7.1 million votes, I didn't really lose. And so we have 30% of American folks say, oh, he didn't lose, even though he lost by 7.1 million popular vote and substantial electoral college vote. So now we have misinformation. This disease process became political. But the bottom line is that the disease process don't know race, don't know religion, don't know your sex. It's just a disease that kills people. And folks, this is deadly, and you must take it deadly serious. When you see your friends and your neighbors, if they come around you, my question I ask everybody that comes to my law firm is, have you been vaccinated? If they say no, they have to keep their mask on and stay behind a plastic shield. Even though I got vaccinated as soon as I was eligible to do so, I want to make sure that I'm not exposed to the new Delta variant that is so deadly that's could wipe out a substantial amount of population. So the bottom line is this. I want each and every one of you to look at the actual evidence. Look at what actually occurred in this country. Look at the number of friends, relatives, neighbors who died needlessly. And we got a solution. Americans, we got a solution. We have a shot that prevents you from dying. We have a shot that saves your life, your friend's life. And so I'm all in favor of this, and I want you to also take it seriously. Tell your friends and neighbors, get all this crap out of your mind about the government controlling you. There's 330 million people in this country. It's not possible for the government to control 330 million people. We have people doing mass shootings every day. If that was the case, we wouldn't have those. So keep that in mind. And I'd like to thank each and every one of our callers today for participating in this democracy. I'd like to thank our callers, even the ones that said things that I didn't agree with. I thank you for participating, because that's what America is. It's called the First Amendment. And folks, don't ever think this issue about crime in our community, I take that serious too. But don't ever agree to give away your Fourth Amendment rights just because we have a problem with crime. Don't ever think that's the solution, because that's never been the solution to our community, ever. And finally, I want you to make sure that our police department locally is held accountable. They're doing a terrible job now at protecting us. And this is Nathaniel Lee, and thank you for listening today, and I look forward to talking to you in the near future. Thank you, may God bless and keep you till we meet again.